Welcome to Roger That, a podcast presented by HVAF of Indiana. I'm your host, Lauren Carpenter, and join me as we discuss how HVAF is ending veteran homelessness and how you can join us in our mission. We'll be having conversations with community partners, staff members, and even some of the veterans we serve. We hope sharing more of our story with supporters like you can shine a light and give a voice to this vulnerable population, because no hero should ever be homeless. Here in Marion County, where HVAF primarily serves veterans and their families, the average gross salary is $42,000. And as it's suggested to spend 30% of your income on housing, it's becoming more and more difficult to do that. According to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, monthly rent for a one-bedroom in Marion County averages $1,100 a month, while a four-bedroom averages $2,100 a month. On top of that, we are all seeing higher price tags at the grocery store than ever before. It's becoming almost impossible for our veterans to find affordable housing and to live a self-sufficient life. Amy Nelson, Executive Director of Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana, said we are seeing this issue all over Central Indiana.
Unfortunately, the housing market has gotten more critical in our state. It's been a very quick progression to where we are, and it just doesn't seem like it's getting better anytime soon. And that's both if you are a renter as well as a wannabe homeowner. The market is very tight. It's been going up and wages have not been keeping pace. Unfortunately, we're also seeing the same problem escalating in the donut counties, where that used to be places that you could potentially go to find some affordable housing options. Those are gone too. And the investors have been particularly targeting the suburban counties on single family homes. So it's a crisis that's also, hitting there as well.
According to the National Alliance to End Homelessness, on average, 17,000 new people enter homelessness every week in the United States. Sadly, this includes far too many veterans. In Indianapolis, veterans represent only 4% of the population, but account for 11% of those experiencing homelessness in our community. Since 2010, the federal government, largely through the Department of Veterans Affairs, has expanded resources to help end veteran homelessness. One key program in the fight to end veteran homelessness is a permanent supportive housing intervention known as the HVAF program. HVAF stands for Department of Housing and Urban Development Veterans Affairs Supportive Housing. The HVAF program pairs housing choice vouchers from HUD with supportive services from the VA to ensure the most vulnerable veterans can obtain and maintain the stable housing that they deserve. The voucher pays most of the rent, with veterans only responsible for paying up to a third of their income towards rent. There are 800 HVAF vouchers allocated to veterans in Indiana, including 400 for veterans residing in Marion County. These initiatives and partnerships have been successful in reducing veteran homelessness by 52% in the last 13 years. However, last year, 35,574 veterans experienced homelessness, including over 15,000 veterans living unsheltered. In Marion County last year, veteran homelessness increased by 9%. And while we are seeing veteran homelessness on the rise, sadly, we are also seeing housing discrimination firsthand, such as landlords denying our veterans housing because they were using a voucher such as the HVAF voucher to subsidize their housing.
As I continued to look for housing for our veterans and families, and then just listening to the news and doing the research, I came across that property managers and landlords are allowed to deny services or housing to individuals just because they have a voucher.
In his 3 years working at HVAF, Permanent Supportive Housing Coordinator and Army veteran Bobby Schulke has felt very frustrated with how many veterans have been denied housing just because they were using a voucher.
To me, that's more discriminatory than you looking at me, because you're not even looking at me. You're just looking at a piece of paper, and you automatically assume since I have a voucher and I'm getting some subsidies that I'm a bad person or that I'm not gonna be a good tenant. That's couldn't be further from the truth. It's quite often, and that's just discriminating against us, and it's hurting our people in general, our families, our veterans, because as fair market rate continues to go up, their yearly AMI is not going up, so they're not going to be able to afford to live in these houses in the near future without having some type of subsidy.
Amy said they receive calls from veterans with the same problem.
I think when it comes to those veterans that contact us, unfortunately, it's the same of that is can't find anywhere to live, can't afford the rent, can't find somewhere with a voucher, whatever it might be. These are consistent across vulnerable populations and or individuals that just struggle to be able to find safe, affordable, long-term housing.
As of 2022, 19 states, the District of Columbia, and many localities have laws in place prohibiting housing discrimination based on the source of income.
There's a growing number of states that have passed some form of source of income protection or receipt of public assistance type protections. It can be called different things under different legislation. And what that ensures is that as long as you otherwise meet the requirements of the housing, landlord could require a good landlord reference, for instance. That would still apply to you. But if you meet those requirements, whatever those are, you can't be denied housing just because your rent may be being paid through a voucher type program or some other forms of rental assistance. So that's how those programs have been very effective. And I also need to point out always when I'm talking to legislators or to the public about this is not a blue versus red issue. North Dakota, Utah, Oklahoma, what we would consider very red states, have had these protections in place. In fact, have had these protections in some cases in place for a very long time because they were needed to ensure that people were able to find housing who were the most vulnerable in at risk of homelessness and being able to find safe housing that they could live in.
Indiana is not one of these states, but hopefully we can change that soon. We're taking a quick break from the episode to share HVAF's March stats. Here's how you helped HVAF make a difference in the lives of Hoosier heroes in Central Indiana last month. In March, 111 veterans received temporary housing and 179 veterans received rent and utility assistance. 229 veterans visited our food, hygiene, and clothing pantry. Our employment specialists enrolled 17 veterans into their program, where they will receive help with updating their resume, going through a mock interview, and even landing a new job. And so far this year, we have served 764 veterans, and we know we couldn't serve this many Hoosier heroes without your support. So thank you for donating, volunteering, following us on social media, and being a part of the Roger That podcast community. To find out more about how we serve homeless and at-risk veterans, as well as their families, head to hvaf.org. All right, let's get back to today's episode. Last summer, Bobby decided to share his frustrations regarding landlords discriminating against our veterans with HVAF CEO Emmy Hildebrand.
Yeah, that's actually a funny story. As I said, I was doing some research and just, doing some stuff, watching the news. And it kind of made me upset. And I'm like, man, they got a bill out there where landlords can just deny right off the voucher. And the city wants to say that their goal is to end homelessness. Well, that's not helping it. So one day I was in my office, my door was open, and I had seen Emmy walk by, and I was like, hey, Emmy. Quick question. I want to take a bill to get a bill changed that would better provide for people within our city. And then she was like, oh, well, HVAF can get behind that, definitely. And then within the week, we was already meeting representatives, and then we went and met Representative Pack.
Well, I think what attracted me to the whole thing is the blatant discrimination. And they presented the problem to me. I wasn't totally aware of this, that our service members could have vouchers and still be refused and not able to provide a roof over their head. So, of course, I was pretty appalled and asked them what it is that I can help with.
State Representative Renee Pack represents Indiana House District 92 and was elected to the Indiana House of Representatives in 2020. She serves on many committees through the House of Representatives, including Veterans Affairs. Renee is also an Army veteran, serving from 1986 to 1991.
It has shaped me tremendously. I don't think I'd be here. I don't think I'd be doing the work that I do. There's nothing in my life that I think would be the same if it had not been for my military experience. Dealing with veterans now is such a blessing to be doing that work.
Renee said she was unaware of this issue until Bobby and Emmy met with her. Once she heard about it, she knew she had to do something right away.
We kind of briefed her on what was going on out here and how it's hindering our veterans and our families. And then she took it and she was running with it. And then, within 3 days later, she had us at the State House talking to a handful of people. Emmy and I briefed them on what we're seeing out there and how it's hurting our veterans. I think the main thing that helped us is we did a lot of our research. So we knew fair housing apartments out there was only a handful. When you Google housing in Indianapolis, Marion County, like almost 900 spots came up. When you put in fair housing or accepted vouchers, I think it came down to like 3 apartment complexes. And then, from experience, our private landlords that do accept vouchers, they're all on the east side in the impoverished areas of Indianapolis. So as they're pushing these individuals to where they want them to live, they're not really giving them the housing choice. It's like you have a choice. It's a housing choice voucher, but the only choice you have is where we're going to allow you to live. And it's those few apartment complexes or, those few landlords that are on the east side. Then we also gathered the research of the crime rates and the grades in all of the area codes, zip codes where our veterans live. And, we looked at probably 25, 30 of them. And the average grade was a D. Only 2 zip codes had a better grade than a C. So I think that really pushed them to want to send the bill up this time.
In January of this year, Renee, along with the Indiana Black Legislative Caucus, introduced House Bill 1087 during the 2024 state legislative session. They introduced this legislation in order to protect Indiana veterans and prevent this kind of discrimination against those who served in our military. Unfortunately, House Bill 1087 did not pass, but this isn't the end. Renee said we will come back and push the bill again next year and keep pushing it for however long it takes.
I always get a little bit upset when people just kind of say no to vets. How can you? How dare you? What I've learned, vets are so humble. Mm-hmm. We'll just take whatever's, given our way. And I'm getting tired of that. We're going to have to start yelling and screaming and standing on top of boxes in the State House and really yelling and demanding some rights. And thing about legislation, you got to be patient. Mm-hmm. And if you keep going and going and believing in it and bringing it back every year, and every year you get a little bit better about how to present what you want. You grow a little bit. You know the right people to get with. So it's a learning experience too. And it does take a tremendous amount of patience. We'll be working on it throughout the year. We won't let it die. We won't be quiet about it. We'll make sure that by the time we go back into session next year, you all know what we've been working on and what we want for our vets.
Amy with the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana said continuing voucher programs is vital for vulnerable populations to improve, grow, and thrive.
The true dream of the voucher program is to get people out of poverty. By providing that voucher, that then allows them to not have to worry as much about their rent payment, and then they can focus on other things, employment, education, caring for their kids, whatever it is. And then that leads to where they can then get out of poverty and get out of the voucher, or their kids can get into good school districts or whatever it might be. That was the dream of the voucher program. But unfortunately, if a housing provider can say, no, I'm not going to rent to you just because that's how your rent is going to get paid, no other reason, just because of that, that then leads people to be driven back into higher poverty areas that they may have been wanting to leave, that then doesn't fit the dream of the voucher, being able to get somebody out of poverty. So this is a problem in our community that we all need to be talking about, that it is needed. And this is about helping those who just need a little extra help. These are programs that are available that are underfunded, and it's important that we support them and allow them to work effectively. And I'd like to see, this be something that is, more statewide, or that if it can't be statewide, that we allow cities to make individual choices to what's needed for their particular constituents. What might be needed in a Fort Wayne, Indiana, may be different than a Bedford, Indiana. But we need to allow cities to be able to decide what is best as it relates to housing needs for its constituents.
Despite the bill not passing, Bobby still sees this past legislative session as a win for HVAF.
Well, Emmy and I, we kind of discussed it, and we knew that it wasn't going to get through this time due to it being a short session. I'm still disappointed because I feel that if we don't pass this bill, we're going to continue to drive more people into homelessness than we are helping people out of homelessness. We're going to keep people in impoverished areas that are already on the vouchers, and they're not going to have the ability to get out and overcome the areas that they're forced to live in. I think we go back to the drawing board. We dive deeper into the research that we were doing. We showed them more numbers. And then we just continue to talk with Representative Pact and push this and get more people on board with us. It's not going to die here. I've told Emmy, she's got me here until I'm 50 or 55 for 7 to 12 years. Like I got this. It can take 12 years. I got all day. Even after that, when I do fully leave and retire, I won't have a job. So whatever she needs me to do at that point, I can continue to push it. I think the more people hear this and see this and see the research and the numbers that we push out, and we've already made strides just from, me getting mad about it one day and asking the CEO, Emmy, a question. And, that started the ball rolling. It wasn't even going to be on this session's list until we started talking about it. So to me, that's a win.
Amy said she's thankful to see more organizations like HVAF speak out against housing discrimination.
Thanks for HVAF for all the work that you've been doing. It was great to see you take an interest on this particular issue last session. Again, with more groups like yours speaking out, we can make progress. And I have seen that in recent years in the State House where more and more organizations and individuals are coming together. The movement for fair housing has just grown so substantially in our state, but we need a few more. It's not there yet, but each year it gets bigger. And thank you so much for all the work that you've been doing.
Renee urges those listening to Roger That to support this issue by emailing and writing letters to your state representatives and senators. You can find out who represents your district on the Indiana General Assembly's website, iga.in.gov. The link to the IGA website, as well as contact information for Renee Pack, Amy Nelson and the Fair Housing Center of Central Indiana, and HVAF will be included in today's show notes.
Not just this issue, but any issue you have, letters and emails and phone calls. If you do not hear back from your state rep or whatever representative you're calling, make sure you keep calling and you call and you call. You make them answer you and you make them notice you and you make them hear you. 1087 just asked for veterans to have a voucher to have somewhere to live. That's pretty much what that was all about. And you told us no.
If we don't make housing affordable and we don't give them the ability to use their vouchers in the nicer neighborhoods, we're just going to continue to hinder our children. And they're the future of the world, and we owe them better. They deserve better.
We really need the support of the public.
All right, that wraps up this episode of Roger That. Thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to Roger That on wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us on social media at HVAF of Indiana. And for even more stories on HVAF and the veterans that we serve, check out our blog on our website at hvaf.org. Thank you, and until no hero is homeless, we'll see you next time on Roger That, a podcast presented by HVAF of Indiana.